Hello boys and girls! Today we are going to be creating a paper mosaic that was inspired by the artist Alma Woodsey Thomas. She created abstract paintings, and many times abstract means something that is not realistic, but many times she used shapes like circles and stripes and things she found in nature. For this lesson, you will need some glue. That can be a liquid bottle of glue or a glue stick, a pair of scissors, and some pieces of paper. I cut mine into strips so it will go faster, and I suggest that you do the same, but you don't have to. If you don't have colored paper, that's okay. What you can do is you can look through a magazine and find areas where there's lots of color. Here's right on the cover of Martha Stewart, there's tons of color that you could cut out and then cut into little squares. To illustrate this, here's a scrap piece of magazine. All I would have to do is cut out a bigger area with the color that I want, and then cut that into little strips, and you can use that in your mosaic. To show you an example where I've done that, I created this mosaic just to show you what it would look like if you used magazines to create your mosaic. Now, Alma Thomas, as I said, was inspired by things in nature, and she was also inspired by the planets. So I think for this lesson, I'm going to think of the galaxy and planets, and I'm going to create a work of art based on maybe a blue planet. Now, after you have your strips of paper, I like to draw out my circle in order to create my design. So just draw something very basic on your paper. I'm going to trace this bowl. For this one, I actually just found something that I could trace that was circular for my first example. So using a pencil, just lightly trace out your shape. You can use a bowl, a plate, or anything that you have that's handy that's circular. I have my blue planet. As you can see, I chose colored paper that were blues and blacks and purples because I kind of wanted a galaxy feel. And you can either cut or tear the paper. In my first example, I cut, but in the magazine, I tore. So it's up to you what kind of look that you want for your paper mosaic. Now, what I like to do first is to just rip a whole bunch of little paper tiles, I'll call them. Next, I am going to start gluing them down. I like using liquid glue personally, but you can use, as I said, a glue stick would work just as well. And I'm going to just apply the glue in an area that I want the tiles. Then I am going to put my tiles on, and I'm going to be very careful that when I put the next tile on, it does not touch the tile next to it. See, I'm not pouring the glue on. I don't want the glue seeping out from the paper, or I don't want the paper to buckle too much. And I'm just gonna apply these little tiles, being very careful not to have them touch. I also want to stay within my circle, so I'm going to tear this one a little bit shorter. Keep it inside of my circle. Next, I'm going to take my next color and I'm going to tear that into little tiny squares. I like to keep my squares under 1 inch. In fact, I like to keep them to about 1/2 inch. These are just a little bit bigger. Now I'm going to put a little bit of glue. Notice I didn't put the glue everywhere because as I'm putting it down, that takes time and the glue could be drying up. So if you put too much glue, just use the top of your glue bottle to kind of spread it out. So just do a little area at a time and make sure that your tiles don't touch one another as you work. You're going to continue until your whole planet is filled up. And my planet is complete. It is time to begin the background. What I'm going to do for the background is instead of going in stripes as I did for my planet, I'm going to start going around my circle. You can go in any direction you want. Maybe you don't want a circle at all. Maybe you want a triangle or you want waves. Maybe you want something else that you're inspired by in nature. The choice is up to you. And my work is just about complete. Just a few little things to do. One is to cut off the tiles that are sticking off the edge of the paper. You notice that I made sure that every piece of my white paper was pretty much covered. There were no big spaces that were left white. I tried to make my tiles come as close as they possibly could to touching without touching. Other things is to cut your paper into strips. Does make it a lot faster and easier to create your paper mosaic. But you don't have to. You can make, as I said, any shape can be, cut and then cut again into little squares if you'd like. You don't have to tear. I liked the look of tearing the paper a little bit better because I felt like it was a little more interesting than cutting it, but either one that you prefer, either one is easier. And when I'm tearing my tiles, I always hold each strip of paper between my fingers and then tear. That way I have a lot more control over what kind of tear, if I want it to be diagonal, or if I want it to be just straight. It's a lot easier if I'm really pinching those two pieces. And finally, don't forget your artist signature. Boys and girls, have a wonderful day. I cannot wait to see what you create.